This is Business Decoded podcast with Ronnie Spellman. An informal chats with top business moguls as they share their stories of failure and success in a fun and relaxed way. Get entertained, educated, and unlock the secrets to success.
Welcome to the Business Decoded podcast with Ronnie Spellman. I'm here with a delightful guest, someone that I met through a mutual friend, Philip Sarnecki.
Yep, that's Philip Sarnecki. Yes.
Sarnecki.
Yes.
Welcome.
Thank you, Ronnie. Good to be with you.
It is quite a pleasure meeting you. You're a business guy that grew up in Kansas.
I actually grew up in downstate Illinois.
Okay.
Been in Kansas for 20 plus years, but grew up in downstate Illinois in a little tiny farming town called Homer, about 1,000 people.
Wow.
Yeah.
Quite a small community, but you've built an incredible business. So when I heard about you, and we'll talk about how I heard about you and what you're doing now, but your father was a janitor, from what I understand. Your mom was a secretary, and you moved from that small town and did something incredible. Tell us about your business.
Yeah. So, I started my first business really when I was 19 years old in college, because even if my parents had wanted to help me, although my dad was kind of a, you do it on your own kind of guy,
right.
But they didn't have the money to help. So when I got hurt playing football and, I really needed to pay for college.
Right.
And so at 19 years old, I started selling insurance in college. And but my senior year, I was making, I think I made $26,000. And then really over the next 30 years, built that. We had about 18 offices.
So that business you started in college is what you continued with? It was that same business? That's incredible.
Essentially it was.
Right.
Yeah, that's
it's just
right.
kind of morphed into.
Yeah. So we had an insurance business and a wealth management company as well, that we really built over the next 30 years. And I sold those on August 31st.
So we'll come to that in a moment.
Uh-huh.
What inspired you to start an insurance business, though, while in college at 19? Of all things, other people are they're working at McDonald's and Burger King, other places to make money to get through college, but you started.
Well, really, one of my best friends, a gentleman named John Wright, who's in Atlanta now, in the same business. His father was in the business, had been very successful. His dad had played football at the University of Illinois. Very successful first round draft choice in the NFL. Back in I think it was the late 60s, early 70s, but had a short NFL career. But then after that, got into the insurance business. And, my dad being a janitor, we didn't have a lot of money. So I grew up in a little 900 square foot home with one very small bathroom. And, they had just a wonderful lifestyle. They had an 86 acre estate with tennis court, basketball court, and a, private lake that we'd water ski on and try to hit golf balls over. And, they had another home in Florida, and they eventually built like a 10,000 square foot home out there, a world-class 7-stand sporting clay shoot, a football field, like a regulation size football field, goalposts, the whole deal.
Right.
So when you're a 15, 16-year-old kid growing up out in, rural farming community, it was like a little Disney World to me. And they lived about 2 miles from our house. So when I was
2 miles from
about 2 miles from my house. Okay. We lived on the edge of town, and then they kind of lived out in the country.
See, I can't imagine what that's like, just to travel that little distance, and then you walk into what seems like paradise.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And it really was. And I know, but my perspective probably was pretty small back then.
Sure.
But it was amazing. And John not only financially was extremely successful, but he loved what he did, and he had a tremendous impact on people's lives. And he also seemed to have a lot of free time. He'd be out at our football practices at 4:00 in the afternoon, and so I just kind of growing up watching his lifestyle, it was very intentional. And that actually became the mission statement for our business, was to help our clients, financial advisors, and employees create successful, well-balanced, and intentional lifestyles. And that was the mission statement. But that really came from me growing up watching John's lifestyle.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, what was that like, though, in college? So you go to class, you have a few classes, and then what did the rest of that week and day look like running your business as well at 19?
Yeah.
Especially insurance. Again, that's not easy business to understand.
No. Well, and it's also filled with rejection and failure.
Right.
You know, you're picking up the phone. People are canceling appointments. They're standing you up. Kind of prepares you for another world. And maybe politics or something. I don't know. It was intense. I mean, but a lot of kids would go out and, go to the bars on, Thursday, Friday night, and I was working.
Right.
I was building my business, and I was going to class, and, other kids, I mean, I give them credit. They had jobs as well, but they would go to to a job as an employee, and I would just really go work on my business is what I would do. So.
And you did that all through college. So it's RPS Financial Services.
RPS Financial Group. And we were basically, so we were one of the Northwestern Mutual agencies is what we were. So it was the Northwestern Mutual internship. But you're self-employed. I mean, you're an independent contractor running your own business, just kind of under their umbrella, selling their products.
When do you think you realized that the business would work? So you're 19, you're young. A lot of people are still trying to figure out what industry, what type of job, what type of work they want to do. When did you realize that this is going to be something long-term?
I would say probably about 6 months or so into it. I remember now it was an office there. It was a Northwestern Mutual office, but I remember leaving late at night one night. It was about 10 o'clock and I left, and, it was the old fashioned lock. You literally stick a key in and turn the bolt. And I did that. And I remember doing it. And I thought, because you're paying rent. I mean, you have to pay rent and everything. And I didn't own the building, but as I locked it and I started to walk away, and I said, I'm 19 years old and I just locked the doors on my own business. And people started, buying. People would buy. We had amazing products, and, you sit down, you ask people good questions, you help them solve their financial problems. I mean, we ended up just in the state of Kansas, we had almost 100,000 clients out of our firm.
100,000?
Yeah, that we were helping them with their financial futures. So.
Wow. Wow. And so was there something that you went to that taught you how to do what you did at 19?
Yeah, Northwestern Mutual did all the training. And so I went through their college intern training classes.
How did you convince them to let you in?
Well, podcasts are so popular, even monkeys are doing it.
75% of Americans listen to podcasts monthly. That's 210 million people in the United States alone. And yes, podcasts are profitable. Joe Rogan is making $30 million per year. Your content, your knowledge is worth sharing. Don't just dream it, do it. Visit andycostafilms.com/podcast and turn your content into leads.
That's a good story there.
Yeah, it is a pretty intense selection process. Right. I mean, I know, because once I started doing that, we would only bring in about 1 out of 30 people that were interviewed. So, a lot of, I don't know. I mean, now I grew up with, our CEO at the time, John Wright. I grew up with his son, who was one of my best friends. So he knew me.
Sure.
And he was really, the one that wanted me to take a look at, insurance as a career.
So tell me about your growth then. So today, I think the company, you say, has over 1,000 employees just for...
Well, so that company ended up probably with about 550. But if you take all of my companies, so, we have an employee benefits company that we're actually getting ready to sell.
Nice.
We have a large quick lube business in 5 states as well. We have a movie production company also. We have a company.
I heard you had a great movie in that production, right?
Well, I was executive producer. Our company didn't produce it, but I was executive producer on a film this summer, Monster Summer. I actually didn't do great at the box office, but it did really well. Was number 1 on Paramount Plus for 3 weeks, and it's got Mel Gibson and Kevin James and Lorraine Bracco, Mason Thames. Yeah, David Henry, who's a very good friend,
right.
Who of course grew up on Wizards of Waverly Place. David was the director, and Henry have become their family become very good friends.
Now, at any point in creating this collection of businesses, at any point did you think, I'm not sure if it's going to make it? I know a lot of business leaders talk about having companies and they're just not sure, and they decide to stick with it. So was there any point that you thought, you saw success, I think you said within about 5-6 months. But was there any point you thought, I don't know if I can make it? We've had a couple of downturns since then. I was in the housing crisis, financial crisis, and then you get into the .com bust back in 2000s.
Absolutely.
Then you get to COVID.
Yeah. Really done to 2008.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. All the time. I mean, the first few years, there are lots and lots of moments where, doubts can creep in. Right. But I think you just gotta, one of my favorite, Shakespeare, I think it's Shakespeare, our doubts are traitors and make us lose the good we often might win by failing to attempt.
Right.
And so, we can't let our doubts, they're real, the emotions are real, right, but you've got to have the emotional intelligence to be able to overcome those emotions and just continue to work. And that's basically what I did. I mean, it was just keep working. If I wasn't feeling positive about something, go back to work. If I wasn't feeling good, I thought things weren't going well, pick up the phone and go back to work. It's not going to do any good to cry in a corner. Nobody cares. So.
And that's a good Business Decoded tip, because I'm always looking for insight like what you just described to help other people, whether they're young or old, but they're building a business. And you have those moments that you're just not sure. Right. If you can get through that new moment. I've seen a lot of businesses, especially in the housing crisis, these companies that built $60 million businesses, the crisis hit and they're just worried, right? Can I get through this? And so do you have any other unique business tips that either came from your father or your friend's father on business? What Business Decoded tips would you say to someone looking to do what you've done?
Well, my career was an interesting progression because early on in my career, when I was basically doing sales, which I think is a great, kind of background, baseline to build a business career. I think accounting's great. I heard Jack Welch interviewed one time and somebody asked him, hey, if I want to get started and become a CEO, where are the best places to start? And he mentioned accounting, but he said, I would get started in sales. Right. And I think that's so true because you learn to deal with rejection. Absolutely. You have to pick up the phone. You've got to make things happen on your own. You've got to learn to deal with people. Right. You've got to interact with difficult people, with challenging people. I mean, I can't tell you how many times early on in my career I got hung up on. Right. I got stood up. I remember one story. I was very young, probably a year or so in the business, and I scheduled an appointment with a very successful business owner. Right. And I called him the day before basically to confirm the appointment. And I think it was if I'm not mistaken, it was a long time ago, but I think it was at 8 a.m. the next day. And he kind of said, sure, come on out, whatever. And I thought, well, okay. So, I go out there the next morning to to meet him and have the meeting. And I was all excited because here I'm this young guy. He's a very well-known, very successful business owner. And the lady up front said, you came out to see him today? You sure it was today? Right. And I said, yeah, I just talked to him, yesterday afternoon. And she looked at me and she goes, well, he left for Florida this morning. Well, that wasn't an accident. Right. He told me to come out because he knew he wasn't going to be there. Interesting. And, but the funny story, so I've shared that when I used to train my new financial advisors that we'd bring into our company, I shared that story one time, probably 5 or 6 years ago, maybe even longer now. And one of my new financial advisors we were training raised my hand and looked at me and said, do you remember the guy's name? And I thought about it, and I've literally thought about it since then. Okay. And I don't remember his name. Oh, wow. Okay. To this day, I cannot remember his name. Interesting. And it made me really think, because of all the rejection we go through, what if I had just kind of buckled under that rejection? Exactly. And kind of whined about it, cried about it. Hey, nobody wants to meet with me, whatever. Right. And I wouldn't have built what I built over all those years. And yet all these years later, I can't even remember the guy's name. Interesting. I was going to ask you if you ever reconnected with him and he became a client, because I've had a few of those that they stand you up and later on you reconnect and it turns out to be a good relationship. Yeah. And I've had those as well. Right. But really the last 20 plus years, 25 years, I didn't have any personal clients. It was, I had about 250 financial advisors across our 18 offices. So now from those early days, I know a lot of owners will oftentimes save their first paycheck, their first client check to the business. Do you have anything that's kind of unique that you saved through the years and have it framed on Well, no. I probably do. Here's one though that's kind of a story, and I do have this. So when I was in college, what I thought I would do my freshman year, I had two paths. I was either going to be a college football coach, or I was going to go work on Wall Street. Right. Those, I grew up poor, I had no money, so I thought, well, I'll at least go work with money.
Right.
So I studied finance and political science, and so I saw this article my freshman year out in the Wall Street Journal. I kept it, and I'm pretty sure I still have it somewhere.
Very cool.
And it said that a first-year investment and banking associate on Wall Street, and named a bunch of firms, with an MBA from a top MBA school. Now, keep in mind, this is years ago, 1989, I think. That their first-year income would be $70,000.
Right.
So I cut that out. And I put it on, I had a dresser that I had in college for all 4 years with a mirror on it. And I put that cutout up on that mirror. And so literally almost every single day for 4 years, I looked at that and read $70,000, $70,000, $70,000.
Right.
Now, I ended up not going the investment banking and Wall Street route as I, started building my own business, because I liked being, in charge of my own destiny better. Right. But what's really fascinating in a business that I controlled essentially how much I made, okay, and this just tells you the power of the mind, right? Guess how much money I made my first year?
Okay. How much?
$70,000. Isn't that fascinating?
You owed it to
$70,981.
I love it.
Isn't that fascinating?
You reminded me of an interview we had with Dave Kotz, who's an AI guru.
Okay.
And he said he graduated from college, and then his first job, they had him take a personality test.
Okay.
And then the guy came in to read that test to him, and he said, well, I have good news and bad news. Which one do you want? Well, ultimately, the guy told him that you're super smart. That's the good news. But from this assessment, you're unemployable. And from that moment on, he's been creating his own business for the most part.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, smart.
But it's a different mindset, right? Creating a business and having that determination to make it work.
Yeah. I found a career in a business that, I got to control my own destiny. Right. I got to control the outcome based on how hard I worked and how I performed. Right. And I just love that. I fell in love with that. I didn't want a company telling me what I was worth. Right. I wanted to tell the marketplace what I was worth, through my hard work or my discipline. Right. And so, running my own businesses is always, the last paycheck I got, I was a lifeguard when I was 18 years old. And I think I made $7.50 an hour or something.
That's fantastic. Yeah. Now you've decided to give all that up. For the most part.
Well, we're going to keep the movie production business, 513 Films. I have a company called LeaderCast that actually, a leadership company that John Maxwell actually started 25 years ago, that we bought a few years ago. And we kind of reimagined that and brought the live event back to the Midland Theater in Kansas City last year. It had kind of died during COVID. Right. And so we brought it back. And we had Jesse Cole from the Savannah Bananas last year, who was phenomenal. He talked about marketing your company. I mean, it was amazing. We had John Gordon, who was actually a very good friend, and John came out and spoke. We had Andy Stanley, and it was great. And we've got Patrick Lencioni this year.
Yes.
That will be there. And Andy Stanley will be back again.
You hadn't mentioned my name on that list yet.
So I want to talk. Let's talk. Yeah. Kim Hamilton Anthony, who's a good friend. She's had an amazing story. They're making a movie about her life.
That's fantastic. she's
going to speak. So it's kind of I wouldn't say quite all day, but kind of a 2/3 of a day event. Sure. And people bring their leadership teams and their sales teams.
You mentioned Jack Welch. He was one of the people that I looked at and modeled my early career after. He's just an amazing leader at GE. And I was a 7 Habits of Highly Effective People certified trainer. So Stephen Covey I just loved his model. And a lot of companies are using EOS now. Yep. As part of the program, I've had a chance to speak to the founder of EOS. So no, what you're doing sounds incredible. But I want to get to what you're doing next. Okay. So and I said gave everything up. You hadn't given everything up, but you've decided to run for governor of Kansas.
Yes.
Now, we're a business podcast.
Yes.
But I find it amazing that you've made that transition from your private business life to now serving the people of Kansas as your goal. I'll make that transition.
Yeah. We sold our two largest companies, so the insurance and the wealth management business, as of August 31st, to come in and do this, run for governor full time. So, there's a lot of reasons. The state of Kansas, from a business standpoint, is not doing well at all. CNBC just came out with their business rankings by state about probably a month and a half ago now.
Sure.
And they ranked our economy in Kansas 48th. They gave every state a grade, and they gave us an F.
Oh, wow.
Said we're the third most likely state to fall into a recession. Okay. And then just about a month ago, Moody's came out and said we're one of 20 states already in a recession. We also have the highest personal income tax rate of all of our border states, and you can throw in Iowa and Arkansas. Those are not technically border states, but very close. Those are all the states we really compete with. We have the second highest corporate tax rate. So the highest personal income tax rate, second highest corporate tax rate. Our property taxes are about 50% higher on average than all those states as well. So the reality is we are struggling. The working class families that I grew up in the state of Kansas are struggling. Right. And it's not a good environment for new businesses to get started. People are doing it, but they're doing it in spite of the state and in spite of the government, not with the government really getting out of the way, tearing down barriers, and unleashing an entrepreneurial spirit, which is really what we need to do. Because the greatest asset we have in the state of Kansas are our people. But we need to empower our people is what we need to do.
It's a wonderful state, about close to 3 million people. That's from what I recall. What's interesting as well that I know about Kansas, it is truly in the heart of the continuous U.S. It's in the middle of, it's truly in the middle of the country.
It is. Yes.
From east to west coast, but it's a special place.
It is.
And the economy there is pretty broad and diverse, a lot of agriculture as well from what I recall. But what's neat, and this is what I want business people to understand more than anything, there is a partnership between business and government. When you talk about taxes, that's important. And then business leaders need to understand how that impacts their business. Right.
Absolutely. And I was at the Republican Governors Association meeting actually down here in San Antonio just a couple of weeks ago, and I was sitting listening to a session that Glenn Youngkin, the governor of Virginia, former CEO of Carlyle Group, Bill Lee, governor of Virginia, governor of Tennessee, very, very successful business guy. I think he had several thousand employees at one point. Wow. Neither Bill nor Glenn had ever run for office prior to running for governor. And as a matter of fact, about 3 years ago when I started kicking around this crazy idea, we looked around and there were actually a dozen governors who had never run for office prior to running for governor. They were CEOs. They came out of the business world. You had Doug Burgum and Kevin Stitt and Pillen in Nebraska, plus Youngkin Lee, et cetera, a number of others. But anyway, I was watching this discussion. Mike Kehoe, governor of Missouri, was also on the panel. And Governor Kehoe had been a very successful car dealer. So you had incredible business experience with these gentlemen, these governors. And they were discussing, trade trips abroad and discussions with CEOs and recruiting businesses to their states. And they were talking about their economies. And I sat there and I listened to this and I thought to myself, I don't know how anyone could listen to this conversation and think that your governor doesn't need extremely high levels of business acumen to run the state well.
Absolutely.
And as a matter of fact, I'm in a CEO group, CEO forum with Glenn Youngkin. And Glenn and I had a conversation summer of 2024 when my wife and I were still kind of thinking about this and talking to people and praying about it and trying to decide what we were going to do. And so I had this conversation with Glenn, and one of the things he said really struck me. He said, Philip, most people take all the political jobs and they just kind of lump them in the same bucket. He said, I don't think they really think about it. It's kind of subconscious, whether it's senator, Congress, governor, whatever it may be. He said, but the reality is the governor's job is a totally different political job. It takes a totally different political skill set. And he looked at me and he said, it's a CEO job.
It is.
And if you think about what you're doing, you're running multi-billion-dollar budgets, you're building leadership teams, you're making appointments, you're theoretically holding people accountable. That would be something in government, wouldn't it?
Absolutely.
But he said all the skills that you've built and developed over the last 3 decades as a CEO and in your businesses, he said that's the job of a governor. And so it's really a skill set. It's not so much necessarily like, oh, I'm running, the state just like a business. Obviously, there's differences,
Right.
but there's so many similarities, and there's a skill set that you can bring to the table, and there's kind of a mindset that I think you can bring. And a lot of our most successful governors around the country came out of the business world, many of which had never run for office before.
And I think, to your point again, we're not political, but the idea of a governor creating the right environment so that businesses can grow, create more jobs, create more opportunities so the citizens are benefiting from it. There's nothing better than seeing organizations grow and creating greater opportunities for everyone else around them.
Yeah. And as a matter of fact, if you look at the state of Kansas, we essentially have not grown our population in 3 decades. Yeah. In 2023, Kansas was the 8th most moved out of state in the country.
Wow.
And the number one reason cited by far, 44% of the people cited the number one reason was jobs.
Wow.
So again, we have to get the barriers out of the way to allow entrepreneurs to create new businesses that will create new jobs, that will grow our population. And you do that now, rather than having the highest income tax rate of all of our border states and the second highest corporate tax rate, we can start cutting those tax rates and making it much more affordable for the people of Kansas, especially the working class people of Kansas, to live.
Yeah. In Florida and Texas, there is no personal income tax for those states.
For Tennessee or Wyoming, I think that's
quite a few states, and yet they're still doing really well. And you know this in Texas.
Yeah.
It's just a massive state.
Oh, yeah.
Over 30 million people, 8th largest economy in the world, over 55 Fortune 500 companies. Yeah. So it's an interesting place, and it sounds like you're trying to create the same kind of energy in Kansas to bring more businesses, to bring more opportunities, to give people a chance to do what you've done in your career.
For 3 decades, although I've never run for office, for 3 decades, I have built businesses and created jobs, including hundreds of jobs all over the state of Kansas, all kinds of jobs, blue collar jobs, white collar jobs, managerial jobs, executive level jobs. We know how to do that. And I don't want to sound, braggadocious or whatever, but I truly believe that I will be the best job creating governor in the history of Kansas, because that's what I've spent decades doing. And we're going to bring that to the state of Kansas as well.
Philip, what would your father say today? My grandfather was very similar. A blue-collar guy, fantastic, wonderful human, great leader. He was a merchant marine early in his career, then a longshoreman. Then he built a couple of businesses. I remember counting pennies as a kid, just because of his business. It was cash, but counting pennies.
Yeah.
Is a penny.
Pennies.
He really did absolute pain. Right. What would Dad say? He's a janitor, right? That helped to create you and maybe this vision, and at least create an environment where you felt like you can go do something at 19.
Yeah, my father passed away a little over a year ago. And although, we grew up without very much money at all, like I said, about a 900 square foot home, one really small bathroom. And we actually had a station wagon when I was very young, and it had a hole in the floorboard behind the driver's seat.
Right.
And my brother, we had a board and a blanket over it. And my brother and I called it the Flintstones car. And my dad would be like, now, you boys don't lift that board up, And of course, what would we do? We'd lift the board up because we like seeing the road, go by us at 60 miles an hour. But although we didn't have money, what my parents taught me, my mom she lives on our property in a house that we built there for her.
Very nice.
But my parents taught me what's truly important in life. They taught me about faith. They taught me about family. My parents were married for 56 years.
Incredible.
When my father passed away, they taught me about really hard work. When I went off to college at 18 years old, my dad, and this was not in a bad or negative way. My father loved me. He was very proud of me. I know that. But he literally looked at me. He said, "Hey, don't come back." Now, he didn't mean don't come back for Christmas and don't come back for holidays. But what he meant was like, you need to go work, figure this thing out. We're not supporting you anymore. So, off to college I went. And, I look back on that. I wouldn't trade my childhood or my upbringing for anything in the world. I didn't like not having money, when I was a kid.
Sure.
But I would take poverty and take the situation that I grew up in with my parents and my family and what they taught me and the values that they taught me, because I think that's, brought me to where I am.
You're resilient, right? And focused and willing to do what you needed to do. That's really the career that you wanted.
Yeah, I remember being I was really young. I might have been 8 years old or something, but I remember walking into the kitchen and my mom had bills spread out all over the kitchen table and she had tears coming down her face. She didn't know what bills to pay. And, as the firstborn, son in the family, I mean, that's going to really impact you.
Absolutely.
And I vowed to myself that I would always help take care of my parents when they got older because how much they sacrificed for me and my brother and my sister and, our family. And, I think my dad, as much as anything, being married for 56 years taught me about commitment and how important that is. My wife and I have been married for 27 years and, you go through all the ups and downs, but at the end of the day, it's kind of like the career, right? You just keep working and you keep at it and it does, like you said, it builds resilience.
Well, and that concept of commitment, interestingly enough, it doesn't just blend in with your personal life and in your relationship with your spouse, but the same thing on the business side. Kind of like what you mentioned with the guy that scheduled the meeting, having that level of commitment and that trust that you build with your clients, which is commitment, is important.
That's
because when people believe in you, they know you're going to come through, it means a lot.
Yeah, one of the things that it was kind of cool, I had a retirement, when I sold the business, I had a retirement video, done for me. It was really neat. And matter of fact, my good friend in Houston, Jeff Reeder, kind of put that together. But one of the things you would hear from a lot of the people that got interviewed, some of these people had worked for me for 20, 25 years and people I had known for a long time. But they said, one of the things I really appreciate about Philip is his consistency. And I know as a leader, that people appreciate consistency.
Absolutely. And
they will follow you. There's a great line in Braveheart, which ironically, Mel Gibson in one of our movies, and, I've had dinner with Mel a couple of times, but, there's a great line in Braveheart where he says to Robert the Bruce, who's about to take over as King of Scotland, and he says, men don't follow titles, they follow courage.
Absolutely.
And, and courage and consistency, I mean, I think those are key attributes to leaders that people want to follow.
Right.
And we don't see a lot of that in politics, unfortunately.
That is true.
And
so we'll kind of end on this note, but not to get too much into the person. You've been with your wife for a long time. What was it like when you came to her and you said, dear, I'm thinking about this governor thing and that?
It was actually the opposite.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and I know it's not a political, but as a Republican, we had in a pretty red state, lost the governor's election twice in Kansas.
Sure.
And these were people that Heidi and I, we had fundraisers for, we cut checks. And I was very frustrated after losing the 22 governor's election in a state. By the way, we are the longest running state in the country without a Democratic senator. We haven't had a Democratic senator in almost 100 years.
Wow.
But we had this, we had a Democratic governor for the last two cycles. And anyway, I came home and was frustrated. And my wife looked at me and she said, well, you can complain about it or you could do something about it. And she didn't mean write another check. And so anyway, that started about a 2+ year process of us really, talking to people, legislators, lobbyists, other donors, business people, CEOs that I knew, people that were involved in politics about, what would you think about something like this? And we got really positive feedback.
Well, I know as people listen, I definitely believe that everyone should get out and participate in the political process.
Amen.
Get out and vote and support candidates and feel good about trying to do something that impacts the community, regardless of anyone's perspective on politics. But I admire what you've done in business.
Well, thank you.
And you to be commended for building something so great that have benefited so many people for so long.
Thank you.
And I appreciate you wanting to step into the ring as a governor candidate and try to help people, again, to build their lives and careers and success.
Yeah.
So I appreciate you coming on the program.
Well, thank you, Ronnie, for having me. It's been a pleasure. This is really fun.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us on Business Decoded with Ronnie Spellman.
Thank you for listening to Business Decoded podcast with Ronnie Spellman. Please be sure to subscribe and share and stay tuned for more incredible Business Decoded episodes.